We'd like to welcome you to another edition of GrokTALK, brought to you by GrokTALK.com, New Hampshire's conservative website. We are your feared, extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone-stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for 2 hours of news and opinion you can only get from GrokTALK.com. GrokTALK.
Welcome back to your latest edition of GrokTALK, where we'd like to say with Republicans like these, who needs Democrats?
That's right.
Yeah.
He's lost his train of thought. Folks,
it's been an interesting last 36 hours, let's just say that. It really has. Anyway, before we get into that, and we will get into it, I wanted to welcome, first of all, to our lovely podcast, now live streaming from 8 North Main Street, Concord. I know it doesn't look like much, but it's our contribution to the new media militia, I guess we could call ourselves.
Well, that's one way of doing it.
And this week, joining us on the program, Kevin Bloom will be here, along with Mark Warden, to talk about HB 1609, which is civil asset forfeiture, working on prohibiting the state from just seizing your property because they want to, basically, claiming that it was used in some illegal activity. Carla, Gericke, and Ian Underwood will be here after that. Carla is the president of the Free State Project, so Democrats and bureaucrats all over Concord will be getting out their garlic and whatever it is they use for crosses, because they don't usually use those, to fend themselves off from the Free State Project.
Well, certainly the Democrats will be here in full pitchfork mode because, you know, it used to be the Tea Party. Now it's the Free Staters that are the dirty phrase of the campaigns now. Everybody's a Free Stater, whether you know what that means or not.
Oh, I know. I remember, like, in the 2012 elections, we were making jokes. I'm like, they're going to start calling me a Free Stater because they just, you know, everybody's a Free Stater. Everybody's connected to Free Staters. They know Free Staters. Oh, my God. I know lots of Free Staters. They're great. I'd like all 20,000 of them to hurry up and get their butts in our state as soon as possible.
Yeah, as opposed to the person who made the comment, well, we should take people's freedoms away so that they won't come here.
That would be Cynthia Chase.
That's correct.
Democrat from Rhode Island.
Yes, it's okay for their ideology to become topmost here in New Hampshire, but nobody else's. That's the Democrat way, the progressive way. Shut up and do what we want you to.
Oh, yeah, Mike's here. Hey, Mike.
He's on line 1.
I am on line 1.
Mike?
You there? Hang on. Try again. Mike?
I am here.
Hey, there he is.
Mike is working hard on the left coast. How's it going there, Mike?
Well, actually, I just got back from the West Coast. My plane was a little late. Otherwise, I'd have been with you guys this morning.
So where are you exactly?
I am en route from the airport to home.
Ah, okay. Well, that sounds good. Hopefully you will be able to talk with us for a little bit before our guests come in. And just please don't have an accident while you're talking and driving. After all, the Democrats want to take that freedom away from you, too.
They do, but it'd be hard put to do this unless they count conversation with the limo driver as dangerous to one or the other of us, which I saw in Steve's point about all conversations are equally dangerous, and that conversation on a hands-free doesn't count as any more dangerous than a passenger. And since one of my car accidents in my youth was caused by the other driver arguing with his wife and then swerving into my path, I have a first-hand witness to that.
Well, yeah, we're talking about a bill that's in the New Hampshire legislature that would ban holding your phone, basically, and having a conversation. And I've been... You know, people are saying, oh, it's bad. It's just, I've been following this data for years for no particular reason. I was just curious about crash statistics going way back into the 90s. And back then, they used to actually have pretty clear statements that indicated that having a conversation in your vehicle with another person was just as much of a distraction as just about everything else that you can do in your car. And so now we have this bill that wants to ban the use of a cell phone with your hand, as opposed to hands-free. And the assumption is that this will in some way reduce distracted driving, which of course is total nonsense because you can go all the way back through driving history, and distracted driving is based on human beings, not the things you stick in their car. And the data still states, and they're a little bit more wishy-washy about it now, if you go to the NHTSA, the New Hampshire Transportation Safety Administration's website, and you do research, their statement on this is that while there are studies that state that having a conversation is more of a distraction, there are also studies that state that using a cell phone is more of a distraction, so they kind of cancel each other out. What they're really saying is they can't say definitively if a cell phone is more of a distraction than talking to someone in a car, which, as Mike pointed out, having read my post, hands-free wouldn't be any different than a conversation with somebody in the car. A conversation with somebody in the car clearly wouldn't be any different, and having a cell phone next to your head wouldn't be any different. So the Democrats' response to this, and any Republicans who tend to support it, would be that let's punish everybody for something that'll do nothing.
Well, sure, and ultimately, if they go the whole hog, they'll confine all of us to automatically driven bubble cars with single occupancy, so that we can't converse with our family members.
And, that's where it is going to go. And while I like the idea that if I have the freedom to choose to go hands-free, and I think the technology is going to be here fairly soon, certainly much sooner than the legal framework that bureaucrats and elected officials are going to wrap around this whole thing. And now the vehicle-to-vehicle communication that's just been announced by the Federal Department of Transportation, I look at this and go, and how much further is government going to intrude into our lives? And I also look at it as, given what we already know about the NSA, the DEA, the FBI, the fusion centers, and a whole lot of other folks that are watching, and the Dodd-Frank's Consumer Protection Bureau that's monitoring almost all of our financial transactions now. Thank you, Senator Brown, for voting for this thing out of Massachusetts.
And yes, I do buy a lot of anime.
Yeah.
For my kids.
Yeah. So
but anyways, it's a case of now they're going to stop monitoring us in our cars, and I keep waiting for the idea of, oh, well, we'll never do that. We'll never track you in your cars, yada, yada, yada. It's just the slippery slope that we keep seeing happening over and over and over again. Wait till the government decides, well, we have to prevent you from causing an accident. We're going to have a kill switch for your car.
They already have those in Europe. Somebody's introducing them, isn't it? I just saw that this week.
I hadn't seen that.
Mike, did you see something like that?
No, I haven't, but now you said it, I'm going to research it.
Well, you are in a limo. You can do that.
Yeah, exactly. So, let's sort of go over a couple of these things here, because there's some interesting concepts. First of all, the British have a term in law of driving without due care and attention, which is a fancy way of saying what Americans call distracted driving, which means combing your hair, putting on your makeup, reaching down and adjusting the radio, the climate controls, or anything, in fact, which causes you to take your eyes off the road. And who amongst us hasn't seen the driver turn to talk to their passenger with their head sideways more than it's forward? Some do that. And, personally, the difference, I think, between having the passenger in the car who you glance at occasionally or being on a cell phone, you tend to have mental pictures of either the person you're talking to or the thing you're talking about, even though you're looking straight ahead of the road. It's kind of like having a heads-up display. You think, you're seeing two things at once, and that takes a little edge off. You just got to be careful what you do. You increase your space to the car in front. And let us not forget, being a radio ham, I'm familiar with driving with a handheld microphone, long before they had any kind of hands-free devices. The police, of course, drive with handheld microphones. They, of course, being superhuman and able to lord it over us because, hey, they can do these things safely and we can't.
Yeah, the thing that, we have that concept here just in conjunction with what you call the British law of distracted driving. We just call it distractive driving. But now it seems like progressives and some Republicans or progressive Republicans are trying to micromanage all of the laws. Well, distracted driving. How many things can we talk about there? We've always said, well, then they should take radios out of the cars. They should ban drinking of liquids in the car, eating, talking to your passengers,
personal
yada, yada,
care,
yada.
your children. There is no limit. And let's take it to its logical conclusion. Leaf peeping is out. Okay, so New Hampshire Tourism takes a shot. You can't look at anything outside your vehicle other than the road and the traffic. Now, as a point of frame of reference, I drove for UPS part-time on weekends and sometimes during the week for 8 or 9 years. So I've had some professional driving experience. And I can tell you a lot of things about what you need to do when you're focusing on the task at hand, which is not taking a truck full of stuff and hitting things with it, really. That's pretty much what it boils down to. And there are some basic skills.
Ask.
That's really the job. Don't hit anything. Don't get hit by anything. Really, every time you leave your house, you're just going to get from A to B to C or to D or whatever. And your goal is to not hit anything or not get hit by anything. Really, that's it. I mean,
professional truckers see all sorts of stuff too. The tales I heard from some of those, and they grit their teeth as the little four-wheel roller skates scoot across the front of them, and they somehow manage to avoid squashing them.
Well, that's just it. People don't understand that a truck that has $20,000 worth of stuff in it needs more following distance because it needs more braking distance. There's basic concepts of the drive coefficients of road surfaces, tire wear, brake condition, operating capacity, your personal, whether you're alert, whether you're tired, with all these things that you were talking about earlier, play into the role of the driver into determining what is a safe following distance and how aware they are of their surroundings and how they respond to that. That's a human condition. You can't regulate that out of existence. It's physically impossible. So you can't just take items randomly out of the cabin of a vehicle and expect it to have a long-term effect on fatalities and collisions. And I reported, since the cell phone generation started, cell phones are ubiquitous. And collisions have gone down about 1 million a year, and fatalities have gone down about 10,000 a year. And there may be other reasons for that, but if you take that into consideration when you talk about the distraction of a person in the vehicle with you, the cell phone ban's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, well, the accidents per whatever many passenger miles has continued to decline since the introduction of the car radio, the cell phone, and just about everything else. And that leads to one of my favorite hobby horses. It's not the thing that's the problem, it's the person. If they're going to do something stupid, they're going to do something stupid anyway, at which point, your question becomes, what am I prosecuting here? Am I prosecuting for the thing or its possession, or am I prosecuting for stupid behavior? Whether that's for distracted driving while under the influence of a joint instead of a drink. I don't care that the guy has a joint. I care that he has a joint and drives. And if he's stupid, he should end up in jail.
You bring up a very important point, which really gets to the nub of exactly what's going on here. You cannot legislate out morality or stupidity, and yet, as we have heard and I've posted many times, there are Democrats who have said on the floor of the Hall of Representatives here in New Hampshire, the purpose of government is to protect us from our own stupidity. Progressives believe that they can enlighten the rest of us, and they try to do it with passing laws, and more laws as they go along, thinking that if they pass enough laws, they will make us all righteous. And the problem is that's never going to work. They don't understand that you cannot legislate all behavior. That change in behavior that they might want can't come just from the external bars of laws and regulations that they put into place, but only by changing the heart of a man internally, or the way, that's really what it comes down to. Yet they keep trying over and over and over again, and it just fails over and over again.
We're going to take a quick break here, Mike. Hang on a second.
Sure.
And we'll be back in, 60 seconds or so? What do you think?
Yeah,
good?
That's
okay.
good.
And we're going to come back and talk about Senate Republicans. A good deal.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested, riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW, New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
Grok Talk is 2 hours of news and opinion you could only get from GraniteGrok.com. But don't limit yourself to Grok Talk. Check us out at GraniteGrok.com. Follow us on Facebook or Twitter by searching Granite Grok. That Grok Talk was really loud. Sorry, I thought I fixed that. Okay, well, hey, we're back, and we've got Mike on the phone because he couldn't be with us in studio. He's traveling in style on his way from the airport, which is always a fun adventure at the airport. But we're going to stop talking about traveling in cars and moving forward because we have some things that we need to rant about. We have this thing in New Hampshire that's called the New Hampshire Republican Majority State Senate. As I opened with at the beginning of the show, with Republicans like these, who needs Democrats?
Yeah, we're not thrilled, as you can well tell.
Yeah.
What has happened is that we thought that we had persuaded Republicans that expanding Medicaid here in the state of New Hampshire was not a swift idea at all, because it really is nothing more than the expansion of government, the expansion of the spending of government, the expansion of government into people's lives. And in fact, there's a whole bunch of stuff, more taxes, more spending, and
not to mention the fact that you can never sunset this stuff, even though they've written it in there or they're saying they're going to write it in there. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah, it's basically just a bad deal all the way around. In fact, as Steve said, the federal government has said that they promise. Now, this is coming from the administration whose every campaign promise has an expiration date in the past, that they were going to, they'll provide funding for the first 3 years at 100%, and then it drops to 90%. Well, yeah, they said that for special education as well, and that worked out so well for us here in New Hampshire, didn't it? And so after...
New Hampshire special education absorbs most of our budget after... payroll and benefits. I'm sorry, Mike. Go ahead.
Yeah, that sunk to about 17%, didn't it?
Yeah, it's down there at some point. But it's just the case of, as I've been writing about before, consistency breeds trust, and trust will yield votes. But how do we measure what a good Republican is? Well, we have the Republican platform. We've said this over and over and over again, both here on Granite Grok as here on Grok Talk. And yet these rogue state senators who believe that by carrying out the Democrat issues is going to earn them the undying faith and love of the public is just totally misguided, because as I listed this week, in fact Friday or Thursday when it came out, they've broken half of the planks in the Republican Party. Now, we're always being excoriated, us at Granite Grok, for calling out people that we declare to be rhinos. Well, when you break half the planks, that's less than the vaunted Reagan 70 to 80%. That's like you're at 40%.
It doesn't leave you much to stand on, does it?
No, it doesn't. And it's like...
And we can only hope that they end up with splinters in their posteriors.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Or getting whacked by with those same planks by those of us who actually think they mean something.
Remember, swinging lumber is the purview of Maggie Hassan and the Democrats. Let's just...
Yeah, well, that might be a habit I'd like to pick up right about now. And I'm not planning on swatting their behinds with it either. But,
Two words. Primary opponent. Okay, go ahead.
Yes. Well, and I look at this and go, why have they done this? And I've given this, several hours of thought since the news came out this week. The only thing I can think of is that they wish to promote their own personal political careers by attracting independents and Democrats rather than standing firm with the Republican Party. And in that post, I went, how have they screwed over the Republicans? And there's more than a few things that they've done, most of which is by handing Maggie Hassan, the Democrat governor here in New Hampshire, basically a bloodless win by carrying her water for her. They've basically screwed over the governorship of any Republican that was against Medicaid expansion, and in this case, Andrew Hemingway. Mike?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, they've gone from being the welfare collectors for the tax collectors for the welfare state to being the expanders of the welfare state. They have gone so far beyond what we even castigated Bob Dole for that it's really hard to believe. And they really have morphed. As legislators, they believe that they are our betters, and they owe it to us to lead us in the direction that they think best. And that's not what we sent them there for. We sent them there to make the minimum necessary laws, to run the state functions, and to balance the budget. And they aren't very good at any of those.
Right, and you hit it right on the head, that they believe they should be leading us in the right direction. You know what that's called? Progressivism. Mm-hmm. And this proves that there are progressives in the Republican Party, just like there are the Democrats. And what else it proves is that I've been calling some of these folks to their faces, and they are not amused when I do this, the junior partners of the Democrat Party. And now I came up with the phrase, the least lackeys of the welfare state. And frankly, it fits now because I haven't had to make this stuff up. If they're going to do it, they're going to get excoriated for it. I mean, they've done it. If it wasn't for the fact that they've done it, we'd have nothing to say. But the fact that they keep doing things like this just keeps giving us more and more fodder. And they don't seem to understand that we are not going to ignore what they do.
By the way, masterful Photoshop of that cartoon with the Jeff Bradley and Chuck Morse looking over Obama's shoulders as he champions Obamacare right next to LBJ. I thought that was a great Photoshop there, guys.
Yeah, well, considering that I barely got through intermediate stick figures in junior high school, that's about as good as I'm going to get. But, it does show. He's right there. That putting in socialized medicine, a.k.a. Obamacare, of which Medicaid expansion is part of, that's the last big step for progressivism. And progressivism, if you can't remember, is that foreign political philosophy that says you are too dumb and life is too complicated for you to run your own life, so we will do it for you. As if merely getting elected or appointed into the government bureaucracy automatically heightens your IQ by 60 points. I've never understood that.
Yeah, just as becoming a police officer heightens your driving skills to the point where rules about distracted driving don't apply to them.
Yep, you got it. And that's not the only thing they did. We've had the Medicaid expansion grassroots barrage going on for weeks, since last session, really, when the Senate tabled it. And, of course...
And isn't it true that AFP has been part of that grassroots effort, and now we have the incumbency protection people are now trying to find ways to stifle grassroots groups?
That's where I was going. The Democrats, well, it's kind of true. The Republicans, oops, the Republicans in the Senate are grasping both sides of this whole debate and running forward with Medicaid expansion. And now there are rumblings that SB 120, which rumbled its way around in the Senate last year, sponsored by Jeb Bradley and Senator Carson, which is a bill designed to affect campaign finance, basically what's defined as a committee, what's defined as an expenditure. We apparently we did waste a lot of ink on this last spring when it first came out, and now they're looking at resurrecting it and pushing it out into the House, where it will most certainly be passed because Democrats love this bill. Basically what it does is it redefines committees and expenditures to a degree that would make almost anyone and everyone a committee, and almost any action an expenditure. So what you really end up doing is reducing the number of players on the field when it comes to political speech to people who know they are already a committee and know their expenditures are political and are more than likely to have the financial support to back up any challenge to their forms of different kinds of political speech. So say you're just a business owner and you say something or you make the most important part of this bill is it doesn't just affect campaigns, it also affects legislation. So if you were talking about a bill or a measure or something that's going on in the State House or in the Senate and you want to talk about it and you want to complain about it or you want to support it, these rules apply to you as well. So if you just want to make a statement about, say, HB 1609, which we'll be talking about in a few minutes with Kevin and Mark, who've just entered the room, then you would need you might have to be a committee. You might have to register if you and Skip and I, for example, decide we want to invest some of our time and energy in
sending out a flyer,
or just supporting the bill. Now, the way the bill's written, as far as I've read it, who's going to determine what we've done and what we use accounts as an expenditure for for determining whether or not we've spent too much money and have failed to become a committee. The most important part about that is this. That doesn't matter. All the big players, the people with the lawyers and the money, the Kathy Sullivans of the world, will file suits or charges against you just under the supposition that if they do it often enough, they'll shut everybody else up. And that's exactly what will happen.
And that's what started to happen before the Citizens United decision, where the FEC would penalize small groups trying to do advocacy work because they could, and the big groups that had the lawyers got away with it. And let's make no mistake here. Jeb Bradley is only about Jeb Bradley, but Sharon Carson is a shill for the unions. So basically what we've got here is the progressives and the socialists taking care of their own turf while making it harder for us to take out advocacy ads or even potentially even write articles about them.
Don't be afraid to sugarcoat, really.
Well, let me sugarcoat just a little bit more. Scuttlebutt says that part of the reason why Jeb Bradley
45 seconds, by the way.
Jeb Bradley is doing this is that he's still miffed from the time that AFP, Americans for Prosperity, decided to run ads against some of what he was standing for. And here's the political retribution, just like the Obama IRS against the Tea Party. Supporting Obama's Medicaid expansion, supporting Obama's IRS administration. Gee, what does that paint Jeb as? Guess who's going to have the target painted on our backs now?
Mm-hmm.
And Sharon Carson's the same way. She's still ticked about the little groups and the people who went after her in her last election. So now they're going to use the power of government to silence dissent. And I'm not afraid to say it.
And there's a lot of collateral damage. Now, I spoke to Senator. I don't usually waste my time talking to politicians who are in elected office unless they come to me want to talk about an issue that's important to them, blah, blah, blah. Well, they did. She reached out to me. Her concern, she said, was these flyers that show up on Election Day that smear you, that people see before they go to vote. I don't care about that. That's speech. That's how the game is played. That's what you have to deal with. That's where we are. And if you don't like it, get out.
And that's what she's entitled to do against her opponents, too.
Right, absolutely. So, Mike, I'm going to cut you off because we're getting to the end of the segment. We're going to come back with Kevin Bloom and Mark Warden to talk about HB 1609, which is about civil asset forfeiture and whatever else happens to come up in that segment. And after that, we will have Carla, Gericke, and Ian Underwood with us. This is GrokTALK.
This is the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is the repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
The Center for Redress of Grievances, LLC, was established officially November of 2012 for the purpose of becoming a media outlet for those individuals who believe and have documentation that they've been unjustly treated by local, state, or federal government agencies. Our mission is to document their stories and to get them out to the public. By collecting and organizing this data, the Center for Redress will be able to better show the public and our legislature that there are issues with some of our government agencies that may be widespread and need to be addressed. Although we are not a nonprofit, we do provide all of our services at no cost to our clients. All of our services may include screening interviews, documentation gathering, audio-video of court hearings, and production of Speak Up, which is our television show. We're funded exclusively through sponsorship of Speak Up and our advertisers on our website. We hope to help those individuals who, with well-documented stories, need to be heard with credibility when the other agencies and media sources turn a deaf ear to them. You can go to our website at www.centerforredress.com and check us out. Anything you would like to donate is truly appreciated, and we will put it to good use.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning. You're listening to GrokTALK.
Welcome back to New Hampshire's most well-armed podcast.
Safest podcast.
Well, we don't know that for certain. All right, we're not driving with cell phones. Maybe we are the safest. I don't know.
I have never felt so safe in a radio studio before.
I'd like to welcome Kevin Bloom and Mark Warden, who've come to join us. Thanks very much, gentlemen, for coming in. We haven't had you in for a couple weeks, and we haven't had Mark in for maybe even longer. I don't remember who's been here sooner, but it's always great to have you guys in here. And so we'll start out with HB 1609. Let's not waste any time. We had you in earlier in the year to talk about the Civil Asset Forfeiture Prohibition Bill, or whatever you want to call it. What do you want to call it?
Well, that's a great question. And
they take my stuff away.
Yeah, that's a good one. Good. We have a suggestion for what to call it, and that's Just Prove It. For the name of how we refer to it. Mark has his own name for it, but...
Can we say it on the air?
We're not regulated by the FCC.
Oh, okay.
And I shortened civil asset forfeiture to Ask For It.
Ask For It.
Okay. That explains the email.
Yes.
I was wondering about that.
Like civil.
See, there is this asshat word that is used in the Internet so that you don't get dinged by the search engines like Google for saying bad words.
But we'll try to keep it clean for the rest of the show. But civil asset forfeiture is a real problem out there. And it's not as bad in New Hampshire as other places, but it could get a lot worse. So what we're trying to do is a little bit of preventive medicine here to keep them from, as Kevin mentioned, basically the problem is the police and law enforcement take your stuff without even charging you with a crime or convicting you. So basically you're presumed guilty before proven innocent. And it's a real problem around the country, and it's a problem here in New Hampshire as well.
Yeah, it started off as part of the drug wars to try to put a pinch on those that were dealing, and especially during the time when crack cocaine in the urban areas was really rampant. I mean, it was a scourge at one point, especially in the urban black community. But it seems like everything else, it morphed.
It goes way, way back further than that, actually, to the 1500s. Civil asset forfeiture was used to accuse property in witchcraft trials. So if your cart went out of control and killed somebody's pig, obviously it was possessed by Satan.
I get it. She floats, take her stuff.
Yep, and so therefore your property did something, and so the king gets all your money. That was kind of the way it went. Well, it didn't make any more sense then than it does now. But
well, how much worse can things get when you're consorting with Satan?
Well, that was the thing. Now we have...
Well, now we've got the government.
Consorting
with
the government, yeah.
It's the same thing.
Well, Iran calls the U.S. the Great Satan, so maybe there's a combination in there somehow.
Righto.
Squirrels.
So there have been some very strange seizures. Civil asset forfeiture has also been used by the federal government for things that they don't like, and there was a real prominent lawsuit that was against 50,000 bottles of oxygen because it was ruled to be an illegal drug. And this was when oxygen bars...
of oxygen on the wall, 50,000 bottles of oxygen.
Yeah, we don't even want to go there. But yes, you could do that. And as a drug, oxygen is very important to many of us.
I'm addicted to oxygen.
I am too. I think now that we can be honest that most of us will have to admit that we are.
I'm pretty sure that progressives would like to prohibit anybody who's a conservative or a libertarian from using oxygen.
They would certainly want to tax it if they could.
Right. And the thing is that once you go down this road that you say, well, we're going to take the property of someone, and it's much easier to sue just the property, and the person isn't charged, but to get their property back, they have to sue and they have to prove that the property is innocent, and property has no rights. So we enter this period of time where we have police officers, and by the way, there's a very strange circumstance here that we noted in what New Hampshire's...
This missing portion of your regularly scheduled program is brought to you by Technical Difficulties. Technical Difficulties is the undisputed leader in last-minute, unanticipated audio-related issues. So whether it's a broadcast or a podcast, when you need something to go wrong, Technical Difficulties has you covered. The missing 4.5 minutes from this portion of the program are available on video, and we will try to repair the audio once the video has been processed. We now return you to your original programming, 4 minutes into the future.
You've been charged, you've been convicted, and that's how it goes. Now, this bill does not address criminal asset forfeiture. It addresses civil asset forfeiture. That's where there is no charge.
Right.
There's no conviction.
Very important distinction because people will try to confuse them.
And they absolutely did in the hearing that we went to. Law enforcement continually, every single one that testified, from the Department of Safety down to the police chief's guy who spoke, they all mixed them together and said, oh, well, we never do that. And if you do it, then we're going to lose a lot of money. If you pass this bill, then we're going to lose a lot of money.
See, to me, as a former budget committee member, and like the political activist I am going to run again for my town's budget committee. I think every activist should run for your local office. If the police department is complaining that they are underfunded, they shouldn't be going to this to fill in the coffer nooks and crannies. They should be going back to their select board, going back to the budget committee, or whoever the legislative body is in their town to say, we need more money, and make the case, here's why. Now, they all pad their budgets. Everybody pads their budgets, and I'm not just picking on the police. I'm not just picking on any government bureaucracy.
Not only do they pad their budget, when they get to the end of their fiscal cycle, they dump as much money as they can left in their budget to make sure they don't lose it.
Right, but every bureaucracy does this, even in big corporations, because of what Steve just said, use it or lose it kind of deal. So from that aspect, don't worry about it. But if there are really gaps in what you do, if you just use, say, normal numbers, well, we have 2 patrolmen, we really should have 6, and they're using asset forfeiture for filling this in, then they ought to be paying, the people who do their budgets should be paying the price for this, rather than doing it, sort of like the old...
Random acts of extortion, or not?
Yeah, or ticket quotas, something like that. Whatever you want to call it, that's, it is what it is.
There are people texting out there. I can hear them.
Yeah. That's all right. I'm recorded. I'm on, here it goes. Do it the right way. Don't do this. And people who do this in this kind of testimony, I wish we would get rid of governmental indemnity so that when you do the wrong thing or you intentionally say the wrong thing to mislead people, you can be put on the hook personally. Right now, we kind of shield all of government. It becomes this big black wall or firewall that says, nah, you can't do anything to us. Well, we ought to be able to, because supposedly they are our public servants, not that they are our rulers. Sorry. I told him at the beginning of the show I was going to be ranting today.
That's good. I appreciate it. And one question that I have is, since the numbers are so strangely disparate between the national average and what happens in New Hampshire, where they're saying the average is around 25,000, I wonder how good those numbers are. Do we really know how much money is being stolen? Or don't we? Is it just something is this just a number that they threw out there, or how do we get it?
I was going to say, I didn't know this flight had beverage service.
Thank you, Carla.
Or is it a case of maybe they're, at the national level, they're picking the wallets, and here in New Hampshire, they're picking up the whole car? What is the difference in the assets that are being picked up?
Kevin brings up a good point here, and that's the fact that we don't know how bad the problem is or how serious it is here in New Hampshire. So one of the aspects of this bill, this piece of legislation we've put in, called HB 1609, includes a reporting requirement, so that every law enforcement agency in the state would be required to report if they have taken asset forfeiture or used that process during the year, how much it was, what the dollar value was. And then we can aggregate all that information in one place so we can see how serious it is. And right now, it kind of flies under the radar, and people are getting away with it because we don't have the reporting. So that's an important aspect that it will lead to transparency and good accountability in government.
It would also be nice to see, and it's probably not part of this bill, but what's the level of effort and expense that citizens who have done nothing wrong, what do they have to spend to get their own stuff back, especially if the allegations turn out to be baseless?
Well, as Caswell said, there's a gentleman who testified in the hearings, and he's fairly well known. I believe it's Tewksbury, and Mr. Caswell owned
and
an
the
inn.
hotel.
Yes, and the hotel, yes. And he said it was over $200,000 had the Institute for Justice not picked up the tab and done it for him. And who among us has $200,000 that they want to pay an attorney?
I don't even think I have $200,000.
Right, or can you even get it? What are you going to use? They picked it, according to him, during the discovery process. They found out that the police had picked his property because it had no mortgage on it.
All right,
it was
hang on
worth
a
$1.5
second.
million.
We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Steve McDonald here. You ever notice how Democrats like to create problems so they can then claim to solve them? Take Medicaid expansion, for example. Even if the federal government keeps its promise to New Hampshire to pay for most of it, it'll still cost New Hampshire taxpayers tens of millions of dollars more to provide inferior care and coverage to people who, for the most part, would never have needed it if Democrats hadn't reformed health care in the first place. That's right, that real expensive reform that doesn't care if it's only affordable if you act like you don't need insurance. Well, its number one claim to fame at this point is how many more people it forced onto Medicaid. And that's only because Obamacare kicks tens of millions of people off the plan they liked and were told they could keep but couldn't. So Medicaid expansion was always part of Obamacare for a reason. Democrats knew all along that the Affordable Care Act was unaffordable and they'd need to make Medicaid bigger and more expensive. So when people got their plan kicked to the health care curb, they could still sign up for something, even if it was something as crappy as Medicaid. This is Steve McDonald for Granite Rock, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you. GrokTALK.
Okay, we're back, and we had a discussion offline that we're going to continue right now.
And you'll be able to see that on the video when I put it up.
That's right, and you'll be getting some of the audio from the video because we had our SD card got full and we lost a little bit of that. So when I post it, you'll be missing a bit, but we'll still have it and you can still check it out. So anyway.
So we referenced a case that happened down in Tewksbury, Massachusetts a few years back, and the Tewksbury, or the Caswell Motel, was seized by the feds. And this was a longtime owner of this small hotel in Tewksbury, and he had been very cooperative with the police and his neighbors, never had any complaints about him over the years. And one day he gets a letter in the mail that says, "We are taking your hotel. It now belongs to us, the federal government." And he thought it was a joke at first, so he kind of brushed it off. Finally sent it to his accountant, then to his attorney, and they said, "No, this is a serious problem." It took him 5 years to fight this. The federal government, using the civil asset forfeiture rules and supposed drug-related offenses, seized his hotel because over the span of 10 years there had been, a dozen different drug busts in his hotel. The funny part is he didn't even know anything about them. These were small-time drug deals that maybe the cops found. And it came out in testimony during the case, which was defended. He was defended by Institute of Justice attorneys. It came out in the case that they asked the policeman, well, how do you choose an asset to go after? How do you choose which people to prosecute using asset forfeiture? He said, what we do is we look at the list of what some of the drug crimes have been, and then we look at the ownership and the tax records and the deeds of all of these properties, and we look for the ones that have the most equity. That is the ones with no mortgage. He said it on the record in public testimony. So it was
nice.
It's just egregious abuse of civil asset forfeiture, and it couldn't have been a better example of
what
how
we do is we
perverse
look
the
for these
system
guys
is.
that got the good stuff, and then we go get it.
Well, Jeff Cooper has a video out. He's a former police officer, and he did a lot of these arrests. And he says that they would look for red Camaros if they wanted a red Camaro, or if they wanted a Corvette, and they'd look at the car and say, "Well, we think we're going to get something from this one," and they'd stop them. And they also showed there's some other things. If you look for Jeff Cooper's DVDs, he was also a dog trainer, and he's like, "This is how you make the dog say, yes, there's drugs in this car." And personally, I've taught a Boston Terrier to respond to, say, cheese and bark, and that's basically what they do. Is they say, "Find the drugs," and the dog barks, and then they say, "Well, the dog's just sniffed out drugs in your car."
Well, that's what they're doing in related cases down along the border or within the 100-mile buffer that they claim that the Interior Department can set up these
Constitutionless checkpoints.
That's it, where they're checking for illegal aliens. But they're basically pulling everybody over. And there's a bunch of videos out where, am I being detained, sir? Which means, why are you stopping me? Do you have a real reason? And usually the guys in the cars or the trucks are all sounded up and videoed up. And they're catching these guys. And yes, there have been a number of videos where they bring the dogs over. And the guy who does the video is proven, I don't do drugs at all, never have, never will. And the dog gets alerted for the drugs. And it's exactly what you say. And it's horrible to see our government doing this.
You got to have your dog in your car, and you go, my dog smells tyranny. Get it on video. Somebody do that and send it to me, please.
Yeah, some of these tactics they're using nowadays remind you of the old Soviet Union or even back to the days of Nazis. Yeah, it's not quite that bad yet, but it seems like it's getting that way with the TSA and FEMA and these people.
The East German Stasi was it's like the Olympics in Russia now. Cameras everywhere. Everybody knows they're being recorded.
In their showers.
They're like, oh, I didn't know they were still like that. Oh, yeah, they kind of are, and that's really what it's like. Everybody gets stopped, everybody gets checked, everybody gets frisked, everybody gets recorded, and that's the state that we're in. We've talked about the spying and the drones and the TSA pat-downs and all the other crap, and it just accumulates, and people are like, it's just one more thing. It's just one more thing. It's just one more thing. And then one day it's everything. And how did I get here? Well, dumbass, it was that one thing way back there where you went, it was just one thing. That's why we do what we do.
And I
say thank you to, you just brought this up. I'd like to thank all of the representatives who voted together on both sides of the aisle to defeat HB 675, the license plate scanner bill.
Yes.
Yay!
Yes.
New Hampshire, only state that's banned those.
Yeah, and HB 1279, which had a voice vote, I believe. I just read it off the 10th Amendment Center website. HB 1279 was a bill to prohibit indefinite detention.
Oh, yes, that was a good victory.
Right. So go to the 10th Amendment Center. They got I linked to it from GrokTALK.com. If you want to go that way, that's fine. Go check it out. They did all the heavy lifting, so I just quoted them and gave them the credit because there are so many bills to follow and so many things, which is why we have folks in and why we get people to send us email and why we check Facebook because you got 1,000 bills and half of them are crap, and half of them, not half, but a small percentage of them are ones you really want to push because they're going to give you some of your freedom back, and it's hard to find all those little nuggets out there. So when we do find them, we like to give people credit for those things.
And this is a great, great bill. Other states have passed parts of this bill. No one has passed the whole thing yet. If we do, we'll be the first state to manage it. And it's a huge step. We've figured when we went into this that it was going to be a no-brainer for folks because we have the Institute for Justice, we had the NHCLU, we had the NHLA, of course, and pretty darn near everybody else. And there was even a phone call made to Ann Rice at the district attorney's office to say, do you have a problem with this? And what was her response? Do you recall?
She said only one little problem that we could work out with an amendment, but overall she was okay with the idea. She doesn't like limiting law enforcement from doing whatever they want, but she thought it was fair. The problem is the committee, which is the Judiciary Committee, didn't really want to spend the time to go through it and study it as well as they should have, and it looks like they're hesitant to pass this. So for your activists who are out there in here in New Hampshire who are listening, please call somebody on the Judiciary Committee and urge them to pass civil asset forfeiture reform. It's important.
And if you want to do even more than that, you can contact your own rep and ask them to contact the Judiciary Committee and tell them what they should do, which is vote ought to pass on this bill.
Kevin started a great Facebook page, so I know a lot of your listeners are on Facebook. Kevin, what's the title of that page? They can go get
Reform Asset Forfeiture.
Yeah, get the details there.
So Reform Asset Forfeiture on Facebook. If you look up Asset Forfeiture in New Hampshire, I'm sure you'll find a couple other things that might be of interest. This is definitely something. This is the cops taking your stuff, ladies and gentlemen, without any reason at all necessary. I mean, yeah, technically they're supposed to have a reason, but they don't need one. And let's be honest. Recently in New Hampshire, the police haven't been faring very well in the press. We had the police officer in New Boston. I forget where it was. Telling college girls at Colby Sawyer College, I'll drop the charges if you let me take some risque pictures of you. He resigned and he can't be a cop anymore, but he's already got over 25 years in. He's got his pension. The New Hampshire AG's office is like, no big deal. So he's off collecting his pension, which is probably more than I make working. And then we've had other cops who are the cop and Ware they're having trouble with. There's a one out in Seabrook they're having all kinds of problems with past and current police officers down there. So these guys, they're human beings just like us. They aren't any different. They are people. Well, they are different. I don't want to get into a discussion about the kind of people that become police officers because that would suck up our last 2 minutes. But
yes, and we're not allowed to shoot fleeing suspects in the head.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's another one. It's been a really bad couple of months. But this is just the stuff you're hearing about it. There's a lot of stuff that goes on you don't hear about.
And we want to think better of those that serve to protect us, and most of them do. But Steve, you bring out the important point. They are all human, and they're just as subject to all the failings that the rest of us are. Folks, any closing words? If not,
yes,
I will.
Please do. We'd like you to remember the number. When you talk to reps, you could reference HB 1609, or if you want to look it up, you can read the entire bill online at nh.gov and go to the legislative section. But when you talk to your representative, talk to them about the Reform Asset Forfeiture Bill and the need to stop police from stealing your money at gunpoint. Just prove it. All we're asking is that you have the same rights as your property does, and you're not have your property taken unless you're convicted of a crime.
Right. It's a good deal. All right. So coming up in our next segment, we will have Carla Gericke. Am I pronouncing that right?
She'll correct you. It's Gericke.
Gericke. Okay. Because we had I'm just going to write it down so I get it right. We had Betsy McCoy, who we have interviewed multiple times, and she's probably going to be in studio next week to talk about Obamacare and Medicaid expansion and all that stuff. This is in her wheelhouse, right? And I didn't know how to pronounce her name, but it's spelled out really, really long. It looks like McCaughey, and that's kind of how everybody...
That's how I say
it. That's what he was saying. So I was using that, and then I found out it was McCoy, and I'm like, it doesn't look like McCoy. It really doesn't. I still look at it, and I go, McCaughey. No, McCoy. So, Gericke, excellent, outstanding. And anything else hot coming up, Bills, you want to talk about? You got about a minute and a half or so. Anything that you want people to start looking at?
Well, I'm very interested in HB 153, which is the industrial hemp bill. It was turned into a study committee by the Senate. It passed overwhelmingly in the House. So this means they say they're going to draft people from various committees and have them take a look at the bill. And, of course, it's already been passed into law now as part of the farm bill. So industrial hemp is legal for states that have already made it legal in their own laws, which does not include New Hampshire, unfortunately. But it does include Maine and Vermont. We've been trying to pass this one since 1999. It's past time. It has no THC in it. There's no drugs. Can't smoke it. It's just for making rope and for making shirts and for making hempcrete, which is actually a great building material. And
right. We'll have to link to that post because we had a great discussion about hempcrete. And it is. You've got this idea in your head what hemp is, and it's wrong. Okay, let's use it. It's wrong. Okay, and thanks to Kevin, we have a much. I didn't think about it. I don't think about hemp. I think of rope. That's what I think of. So, I would never think of lighting it up. But that's a nickname for marijuana, and we're trying to decriminalize that too, which is another discussion for another day because we're running out of time. But we'd like to thank both Mark and Kevin for coming in to talk to us about HB 1609, civil asset forfeiture. Please do talk to your state representatives. Please do contact the Judiciary Committee because of that. I know we contact a lot of reps and committees, and sometimes they don't listen, but sometimes they do. And if you don't contact them, they're never going to listen to you. So let's do that. Get out there. Pick up the phone. Write an email. This is GrokTALK. We'll be right back with Ian Underwood and Carla Gericke.
Turned off or tuned out recently? Can't believe what you see or hear these days? We have the show for you. It's all about taking control through understanding what's happening. Dr. Julianne Cooper, founder and president of Liberty Harbor Academy, hosts Carpe Diem, New Hampshire's first culture and education show on WSMN Radio 1590. Longtime history professor, entrepreneur, and cultural commentator Dr. Cooper will discuss what's happening in and to American culture and education. From pop culture to higher education, Dr. Cooper will help you make sense of the world. So, seize the day. Listen to Carpe Diem with Dr. Cooper every Tuesday from 11 to noon.
Steve McDonald here. Molly Shaheen, Senator Jean Shaheen's daughter, has a very expensive LA apartment where she lives and works, but for some strange reason, she voted here in New Hampshire. Elena Biden, niece to the man a heartbeat away from the presidency. Well, she never lived in New Hampshire at all, and she voted here and went back home. New Hampshire Democrat Emma Roos invited her adult children to leave their homes in Virginia, Washington, D.C. to claim they lived in New Hampshire to vote last November, and they went back home. New Hampshire State Senator Martha Fuller Clark, vice chair of the New Hampshire Democrat State Party, she had a whole bunch of people who aren't from here living in her home, including a paid congressional staffer and an ACLU lawyer from Arkansas. They don't live here. They all claim to be claiming to live here just so they can vote here and then leave. That's not all the Democrats who showed up to steal your votes and then leave, but that'll get you started. This is Steve McDonald for Granite Rock, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you.
GrokTALK is 2 hours of news and opinion you could only get from GraniteRock.com. But don't limit yourself to GrokTALK. Check us out at GraniteRock.com. Follow us on Facebook or Twitter by searching Granite Grok.
This is Steve from GraniteRock.com, and you're listening to GrokTALK.
GrokTALK.
Money for nothing. What did I say? I said, look at those yo-yos. That's the way you do it. Listen to GrokTALK at CNHT. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Yeah, glad to have you here.
Me too.
I can't reach those buttons over there, so that's a huge problem for me when I'm by myself. You are listening to GrokTALK live streaming at GraniteRock.com, brought to you by GraniteRock.com from the CNHT studios at 8 North Main Street in beautiful Concord, New Hampshire.
New Hampshire's leading conservative libertarian blog site.
Yes, and we all have guns, so just get used to it. Yes. That's the way it works.
New Hampshire's safest podcast, as we like to say.
And we'd like to thank Kevin Bloom and Mark Warden for being here. We'd like to also thank Mike Rogers for calling us from the car.
The limo.
And from the limo on the way back from his left coast adventure. And we'll have him here back next week. Betsy McCoy is supposed to be with us, and we're lining up a couple more guests for next week. But this week, we have Carla, Gericke, and we have Ian Underwood back. And I have to say that when we have great segments every week, and that particular week we had a great segment with Ian. And happy to have you back. How you guys doing?
Great. Doing great.
Good. Good to have you back. So, Free State Project. Yay.
Yes, the Democrats have tried to make you, it's all in a perverse sort of way. It's sort of nice that the Democrats have learned about what the Free State Project is, because for Tea Partiers like me, they're no longer calling us the Tea Partiers. Now we're all Free Staters.
We're all Free Staters now.
That's right. If I ever voted Republican once in my life, I'm now a Free Stater for some strange reason, even though recently Republicans are being as un-Free State-like as you could imagine. So.
Yes, yeah. Wind me back up about this.
No, let's stop talking. We're here to talk to them, what they have to say. Welcome, Carla, is the president of the Free State Project, and we're happy to have you here. You have some events coming up. You have some things going on. Tell us about it.
Yes, we do. We have Liberty Forum coming in a couple of weeks. I can't believe it's almost here, and it is going to be incredible. The theme for this year is Watching the Watchers, so we're basically doing a big, sort of trying to highlight the surveillance state, the national surveillance state, all the leaks that have come out with the NSA, and one of our keynote speakers is the NSA whistleblower Thomas Drake. He basically is Snowden before Snowden. So back in the early 2000s, he whistleblew on malfeasance that the NSA was doing, and took a different approach that Snowden did. Of course, Snowden had to leave the country. He felt like he wasn't safe here, and that really does speak to where we are. I think
honestly,
in terms
when you have to run to Russia to feel safe, oh my lord,
the irony.
Yeah, it's ironic and it's tragic. I heard someone from a statesman in Washington say this week that Glenn Greenwald, who's the journalist who's been leaking a lot of, using a lot of the leaks for his stories, are now being called accomplices. So, we're basically criminalizing free speech. And so with Liberty Forum, really what we wanted to do is to bring these topics to light, really discuss them, talk about them. But I think what makes the Free State Project and Free Staters unique is that we're doers. We don't just sit around and talk. I love sitting around and talking, don't get me wrong. But we like to do as well, so we're attracting people and activists to the state and saying, look, not only do we have these problems, but what do we do about them? What are the solutions? And of course, we believe that the Free State Project is a solution to concentrate people in one state and to really try and change things in a way where we can prove to people that, the principles of liberty and freedom actually work.
Well, the entire idea of the states is to, little laboratories, and it'd be nice to have one where we're trying to optimize the idea of balancing liberty and government in a way that's productive for everybody, and that everybody can get along and get what needs done, and then leave everybody else the hell alone. And we're glad to have you here.
Oh, absolutely, and I can't wait for everybody to start coming in. I moved to New Hampshire for a job, and then I became enamored of the live free or die philosophy. And as my family grew up and the kids got older and I could spend more time doing other things, I learned much more about my government and what my government had started from. And I look at us, and you guys are included in this by the Democrats, these right-wing extremists. It's like, no, all we're trying to do is go back to our roots. It's not going right or left. It's going back down to the constitutional values of limited government, and that there's a separation between the branches, and that government wasn't supposed to be overriding civil society. When we read de Tocqueville and we read the founders, government was supposed to be this little thing. Civil society was a big thing, and individuals even bigger. And all we're asking for, let's go back, because that made us the most powerful, richest nation in the world with the greatest amount of freedom. And yet the Democrats and the progressives say, you guys are extremists. Why aren't you accepting your government overlords? Sorry, it's been a ranting day for me today.
Yeah, the Medicaid thing has really got him going.
Well, actually,
all going.
Speaking of progressives, another speaker we have at Liberty Forum is Naomi Wolf, and
wow,
yeah. So, and the thinking behind that, she wrote 2 books that are very similar. They came out around about the time that Ron Paul wrote his books when he was running 2008, 2012. That sort of mirror his points from a progressive standpoint. And I had heard several interviews with her with Lou Rockwell. If your listeners aren't familiar with LouRockwell.com, that's a site I highly recommend. I think philosophically it's one of those ones where you go and you just learn something every day. And I'd heard a couple of podcasts with her, and I was like, we've got to bring her out. She's not entirely on board, but I'm very interested in sort of building bridges and saying, if people are at least thinking about these things. I mean, she wrote an entire book about fascism, which, if you're progressive, that's like, okay, you're seeing the problem. So now let's talk about solutions. Now, of course, she thinks the solution is more state, and we think the solution is less state. But that at least is a dialogue we can have. I like to say progressive is oftentimes libertarians who don't understand economics.
Well, I'm not sure that I would agree with you, because as a Tea Partier type guy, because Greenwich Rock was one of the co-founding members of the New Hampshire Tea Party Coalition. We've since left it, but we were there at the start and helped push it along. I went and I visited the Occupy Wall Street folks, at least here in New Hampshire. And, certainly there was one area that we agreed upon, which mirrors exactly what you just brought up. Crony capitalism. Mm-hmm. We see too much of that. Medicaid expansion being one of those.
Has that corporatist air, doesn't it?
Yeah, and we see the establishment Republicans doing the same thing with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and all of that. Tea Party's about free markets, not pro-business, free markets, and there's a huge gap between the two of them. And we could agree with the Occupy Wall Streeters saying crony capitalism is the problem. And we disagree. They wanted more government regulation. Tea Party is saying make less government because then there's less nooks and crannies for crony capitalism. Yeah, that works. Capitalism to insert itself and take root.
Just take a breath and just say that as one phrase so I can edit it out and use it. Crony capitalism.
Crony capitalism. Yeah, that's the way it goes.
Okay.
Yeah, now he can use it in further sound bites.
I'm going to hold it over your head. No, I'm not. I actually agree with you. People don't understand that corporatism and crony capitalism is part of the Sorelian fascist structure. It's not separatable. I mean, you need to have that element to really have a good fascist, even socialist system. I mean, and of course you can't have those systems without having absolute control. And we don't want that.
Yeah, businesses, I want businesses to succeed. I want them to grow big and grow big on their own merits because
competition, though.
And because they provide lots of jobs, and jobs means money, and money oftentimes means freedom from other stuff. But, we can sit here for a long time. Anyways, Liberty Forum, Naomi Wolf.
Yes, and so Liberty Forum will be February 20th to the 23rd, so it really is coming up. People can still buy tickets. We'll be shutting that down maybe in the next 4 or 5 days, and then we'll also be allowing people to do walk-in tickets on the day. The Thursday of Liberty Forum is in fact free. So if people are curious and they want to learn more, really get a sense of what our community is about, I encourage people to come on Thursday. We have some great speakers. There's a guy called Travis Brown who wrote a fantastic book where he analyzed IRS information to see where money goes. So the book is called How Money Walks, and he and he looked at where money goes and where it comes from. And I'd met him at another conference, and it was fascinating. We're so into localism. I'm really interested in what's going on in New Hampshire. The idea of states' rights and all of that. So he's going to be talking about where money comes into the state from, and it is the usual suspects. It's a lot of the New England states, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and then also where the money goes to. So it goes primarily, I think, to the Carolinas, of course, to Florida with the snowbirds, and then up into Maine, which I found kind of interesting. I was like, those must be the real freedom lovers. They're like retreating even further north.
Ooh, Aroostook County. Man, it's cold up there.
Location.
Right.
Yeah,
where?
If all hell breaks loose, they can just dig a moat
Right,
along the state line,
Yeah.
and
Stay
nobody
out.
will be able to get in.
Well, you said walk-ins, but you haven't said walk-in where.
Right. So it's at the Crown Plaza in Nashua. So, it's very central. It's easy for people if they're coming up from Mass. It's 20 minutes from the Manch Airport. So, yes, down at the Crown Plaza. It's Thursday through Sunday. On Thursday as well with the free talk, with the free day, we're doing Ignite Talks for the first time. And those are basically like TED Talks. It's probably something we're all familiar with.
Watch out for the ducks while you're there.
Right? Hey, the police commissioner resigned, which, I think is fantastic.
I'm still taking credit for some of that. Anyway, it's good to have that. It's nice that you're letting the folks in to see, because, a lot of people will just buy into the narratives and think that you're all a bunch of loons or something, and that we're crazy people, and you get a chance. Look, just come down and check it out. That's all we're asking you to do. It's not Amway. We're not going to sell you a kit. Come and check it out. Listen to people and talk to them. They're regular folks. They have regular everyday problems. They just happen to realize that there's a bigger problem with government, and you may not understand it. I was apolitical before I moved to New Hampshire, and for a long time after. I was working, I was raising my kids, I was doing my thing, and then as 2000 rolled around and things started happening, 9/11, I started paying more attention. I read my founding documents. I started looking at what was going on, where we were supposed to be, crap I never learned in high school 20 years ago, things like that. And I discovered...
Only 20?
It was... Maybe. I graduated in 1981, so 20 years.
He didn't pass math.
I didn't have everyday math yet. They didn't invent that then, and then Common Core's just coming. But anyway.
Because 2 plus 2 is 5, right?
I discovered that, I had always kind of been
a
Reagan Democrat sort of guy, but I was apolitical way back then, And I discovered, after reading all this stuff, that, I was a conservative, and then I I approached that, and then I was a very pro-liberty person, and then the government was an issue, and that's how I started blogging. So that's why I'm sitting here in this chair at 10 after 10 on a Saturday morning instead of home watching reality television or something stupid like that.
Well, a lot of the things that you read, actually, maybe you'd want to put those in a kit.
I might. You're right.
And that
because
you get it with the price of
kit
admission
keeps getting
here.
bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. But if I had to start a kit, my first suggestion to anybody who's ever been through public school is to just go read the founding documents. Don't read them all. Get the Federalist, but read it in bits and pieces because it's not like a book. You can't just sit down and go turn page, turn page, turn page, turn page because you'll be like, after a while,
They did make an updated version of the Federalist pages, which I've glimpsed at, and it's actually fairly readable as compared to the...
What's
in
important?
The sense that they
updated it.
It's like reading the Bible.
Government is awesome.
King James
they
version versus
they changed the
NIV.
words.
No, if you look at the Bible, King James, the older archaic English, and then you read like the NIV or something like that, it's updated American style of speaking or reading. Same nuances, mostly, because words do change, and so the nuances.
Yeah,
but
I've
it's
seen
easier
some
to read.
Common Core things explaining the Second Amendment
That's
that'll make your hair stand on end.
Yeah, that's not what I mean. They tried to stay true to the original meaning.
Sure.
So
I mean, for what it's worth, I would say even before reading the founding documents, I would advise people to read The Law by Frederick Bastiat.
Oh yeah, that's my
Great
favorite.
book.
And I think because there's the version I have has, I think Walter Williams did a foreword to it, and he said what startled him was it wasn't so much that there were new ideas, it was just somebody coalescing all the ideas that were already sort of there in his head.
Yeah, we're going to take a quick break, but it's important. We're going to come back to this because if you look at what Bastiat talked about, or if you look at what Albert Nock talked about, or if you look at what go de Tocqueville, if you go, you can go back even further and look at today. It's the same damn thing. We'll be right back.
Steve McDonald here. Molly Shaheen, Senator Jean Shaheen's daughter, has a very expensive LA apartment where she lives and works, but for some strange reason, she voted here in New Hampshire. Elena Biden, niece to the man a heartbeat away from the presidency, well, she never lived in New Hampshire at all, and she voted here and went back home. New Hampshire Democrat Emma Roos invited her adult children to leave their homes in Virginia, Washington, D.C. to claim they lived in New Hampshire to vote last November, and they went back home. New Hampshire State Senator Martha Fuller Clark, vice chair of the New Hampshire Democrat State Party, she had a whole bunch of people who aren't from here living in her home, including a paid congressional staffer and an ACLU lawyer from Arkansas. They don't live here. They all claim to be claiming to live here just so they can vote here and then leave. That's not all the Democrats who showed up to steal your votes and then leave, but that'll get you started. This is Steve McDonald for Granite Rock, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you.
GrokTALK.
Okay. Hey, we're back. He's over there talking about squirrels. There were no squirrels in Bastiat, by the way.
broken windows.
Broken squirrels. The broken squirrel theory.
I think they were in the French
it's the
version. When it
broken
was
nuts
translated,
theory.
they
That's
were
from.
lost.
My favorite way to summarize Bastiat's The Law is a Facebook meme where it's a circle of words. So it's words that connect together, and it says, "Government is people are bad, therefore we need government made up of people are bad, therefore we need government made up of."
Pretty much covers
and
it.
that pretty much, I think, is it in a nutshell.
Well, that and John Locke, who the founders brought a lot of his philosophy into it, recognized man was fallen, needed government in a limited form to not so much to keep them on the straight and narrow, but to at least act halfway civilized, but knowing that if the same kind of people are going to get into government, you've got to separate all those powers. I've said over and over again, the Constitution is not just pieces of paper about governance. It's about how to keep human nature from taking over. And I get on a lot of stares about that. But that is really what they wanted to do, the separation of powers, to compartmentalize the use of power. And we see its abuses today in our current administration at the national level.
I mean, I might posit that by its very nature, I mean, I know people love the idea of limited government, and if only we could get back there. I mean, I think within its nature, it's flawed because every time it's limited, it's going to grow at some stage. I think it's really hard with human nature to keep things limited.
It is. Like any bureaucracy, it always wants to grow, whether it's a private or a public bureaucracy, one way or the other.
That's why we try to keep things local, because at least if it's local, you
There's
have
accountability.
more people who can hold people accountable.
And that's what's missing as government gets larger and larger. I can literally walk down the street and knock on my selectman's door or the budget committee member's door, or even here in New Hampshire with 400-odd reps.
It's dirty. Look at the supermarket.
Yeah, I can knock on their door and start screaming at them. You can't do that in most places, and that's one of the reasons why New Hampshire is such a special place. But it is incumbent upon us to keep them accountable.
You do that to your congressman, and the cop will take your stuff. I'm just tying this in from our last segment. I like to do that.
Well, you know something? I kept whichever tense.
Sentences, words.
Yes, congressman accountable, and he lost his election.
He did.
Because he didn't keep his promise.
We did. We had a lot of help with that, keeping him accountable.
Yeah, but in part we helped to do that. And I think that's what people have to do. Because, this is one of the things I was going to ask about Liberty Forum, so I'll slip it in now. Okay. We wanted to have a discussion forum, Granite Rock for limited government and John Bush from the 10th Amendment Center about no government and the pros and cons of that. And I'd be willing to live stream it the whole bit, and if we could get a room and a little table, and we'd be willing to do that, because I think that you need a limited government because of human nature, that if you don't have that, you will devolve into the rule of the strong man versus the rule of law.
Arguably, the government is the strong man.
It is, but
it is by our consent, and that's what comes back to the accountability you bring up. So
possibly by our consent. I mean, this is something I was thinking about earlier in conjunction with whistleblowing, right? That everybody, you, everybody has seen a certain Western hundreds of times, right? There's a town, there's bad guys. You hire the hard-ass sheriff to come in and protect you from the bad guys, and he runs the bad guys off, and now his competition is gone, and he's worse than what you started with.
Right.
You can make the argument that that's government. The cure is worse than the disease.
Well, it's funny that you put it that way, because we're sitting in the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers Office Suite. CNHT is well known not just for protecting taxpayers' rights, but also going out to root out malfeasance in our local towns. And then our local town sizes go anywhere from maybe 1,000 to 5,000 people here in New Hampshire. And there's a whole lot of the good old boys. You don't have to go out west for this. You can stay right here in New Hampshire and see the exact same thing.
Yep, we talked about police chiefs in the last segment. They like to create little fiefdoms.
And so do
town sheriffs.
Selectmen, town administrators, planning boards, you name it, there's going to be that popping up of that bad human nature, whatever. And CNHT is all about being the good sheriffs that doesn't move into town. They just stay the good sheriff, and then they help the local folks
They
do
work.
that.
I mean, they go, this is your town. You create a taxpayer group. We will help you create a taxpayer group. We will point you to people who know the law. We will help you interpret what your boards and committees are doing. And then you will go talk to them because you live there. We don't. And you will make arrangements with them and have a verbal form of intercourse, and you'll fight and you'll argue, and they'll probably try to blacklist you in some way, and all kinds of crazy things will happen. But that's what happens when you put a bunch of people in a group anywhere when you've got more than 3, usually. Sometimes you just need 2.
Sure. Yeah.
And then people are going to disagree about stuff.
Right, but which isn't a problem until some of those people have the power to end the disagreement and just say, look, do it my way or you go to jail.
And you know what the biggest way to prevent that from? And I say it from personal experience, because when I and my friend got on the budget committee in my town, they knew that we were, quote-unquote, the right-wing extremists. We were the ones who wanted to cut the budgets because we saw it
crazy
not
people
being
letting
limited
other people
government
keep
anymore.
their money. What's wrong with you?
I got tired of opening up the envelope for my real estate taxes and seeing a double-digit increase all the time. So somebody one day said, why don't you run for budget committee? After I asked a really small but turned out to be very important question that doomed the new police station they wanted to put in, multi-million dollars. And all I had asked was, well, what is your percentage that you're using for the rise in the population that would give you the ability to say, I want this big of a police station over the next 20 years? And the police captain or chief just kind of acted like a corkscrew, like I had asked him the worst question. 30 seconds of silence.
You're not supposed to ask questions.
Well,
no questions.
This is the biggest thing. Granite Rock has always said, bring a big, bad flashlight with you.
Yep.
And we used to get screamed at in the papers that we were the ones screaming and arguing everything else. So I started, we started videoing the budget committee. Then I started live streaming it. And this is well before live streaming was even popular. It was, even as a techie, it was real hard to get to do it.
This is standard activist gear now. Bring a camera.
Yeah,
well,
you bring this and it shuts them down.
You shine the light on them. You know, people will say that the camera is the new gun, really, right? You know, if you can point and shoot and capture it in a way, you shine the light on what's going on, and that is something that's accountable, and that's why they hate it. I mean, I got arrested for filming police officers. You know, they don't like it.
Yeah, and they used to say, well, you'd edit it. You know, same thing that they throw with James O'Keefe at Project Veritas. Well, yeah, you can have hours of tedium and 30 seconds of really good, this shows the face of whatever they are. But you got to post that up and then post the whole thing. And when we started doing that, then these people who were accusing us of malfeasance just because we were breaking up the good old boy network slunk away, and they never showed up again.
Oh, yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned James O'Keefe. He will also be coming to Liberty Forum.
Oh, cool.
He, of course, is, you know, a fantastic guerrilla activist, camera activist, journalist. He was the person who did the Acorn videos. You know, those went viral. He's written a book.
We're in his book.
Yes, and you know, and I would love to see him move here. So, you know, I'm working my magic and my charm. I think we need more journalists. We need more people like you guys and people who are willing to, you know, get the story, to do the filming, to shine the light, you know, and to say, look, this is what's going on, so that people can actually make informed decisions. Technology is setting us free. I mean, these things weren't possible 20 years ago, and now they are. There's almost no cost to it, and Hillary Clinton said it best a couple of years ago, where she said, we have lost the information war. They have lost their propaganda machine. And that's why these ideas are spreading so fast. It's because of technology and because of the Internet. And so, you know, everyone should carry a video camera. Everyone should, you know, have a podcast. People should be blogging, and we should spread these ideas far and wide.
I called it the new media militia at the beginning of the show, and that's really what it is.
I mean, we literally have a TV station on a laptop.
Right.
That's it.
And anybody can get to it from their smartphone or anywhere else they are, anywhere in the world right now. And if you're listening, thank you. And if you're watching, we appreciate it. Please donate. We do this for free, and stuff costs money. Anyway, but you're not required to do that.
I want to bring this up, though, because I wasn't here when Ian was in a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, that's right.
We also need people who are willing to stand up and go testify to the people who govern us to get those points across. And I said it out in the room, and I'll say it again. Your testimony in front of the House of Representatives was one of the most powerful pieces that I have ever read. Pithy, short, to the point, but brought in every single avenue of discussion that was absolutely needed by not going to the right, not going to the left or freedom versus liberty, but going back down to our founding documents and say, this is what you should be about. You have ignored the boundaries. And if you're going to ignore our foundational law, why should we not be ignoring the law that you're setting for us? And I'll tell you, I read it because Susan Olson, another Grokster, brought it to our attention. We posted it. I did a couple of posts off of it. I got to go back and read it again. It was just so powerful. Where the heck did you get that from?
Well, I normally don't go out in public. I live out in the woods and don't see anybody.
I don't either, and I don't live in the woods.
And, you know, and my friend JJ said, oh, you got to come to this hearing. I thought, well, okay, if I have to go, I might as well say something. So I just sat down and wrote that out. But it's obviously the culmination of a lot of thought and a lot of discussions with people like Carla and my wife and, you know, just people who come over to Bardo, right? I mean, and it's. I'm glad that you saw that one aspect of it. Is in some sense, I'm not on anybody's side except the side of let's, at least if we're going to play a game, not pretend we're playing a different game, right? And so, in that sense, I'm hoping to be able to appeal to anybody, Tea Parties, left, right, up, down, whoever. I think we're going to a break.
We are, and we're going to continue this discussion, and we want to talk about more about the guests who are coming. We'll get through all of that in our next segment with Carla, Gericke, and Ian Underwood. We'll be right back.
Steve McDonald here. You ever notice how Democrats like to create problems so they can then claim to solve them? Take Medicaid expansion, for example. Even if the federal government keeps its promise to New Hampshire to pay for most of it, it'll still cost New Hampshire taxpayers tens of millions of dollars more to provide inferior care and coverage to people who, for the most part, would never have needed it if Democrats hadn't reformed health care in the first place. That's right, that real expensive reform that doesn't care if it's only affordable if you act like you don't need insurance. Well, its number one claim to fame at this point is how many more people it forced onto Medicaid. And that's only because Obamacare kicks tens of millions of people off the plan they liked and were told they could keep but couldn't. So Medicaid expansion was always part of Obamacare for a reason. Democrats knew all along that the Affordable Care Act was unaffordable and they'd need to make Medicaid bigger and more expensive. So when people got their plan kicked to the health care curb, they could still sign up for something, even if it was something as crappy as Medicaid. This is Steve McDonald for Granite Rock, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is the repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
Hi, this is Earl Hall from The Earl Hall Show, and you're listening to GrokTALK. GrokTALk.
All right, we're back.
You picked the best music.
I try to. You know, it's actually getting to be kind of tedious. Looking for new music every week. My name's Steve McDonald here with Skip Murphy. And, of course, we have Carla, Gericke, and Ian Underwood with us. And we are talking Liberty Freedom. We are talking Freedom Forum. We are talking all kinds of good stuff. And I wanted to, like I said before I went on the break, I want to talk about more of your guests and more of the events that are going on at Freedom Forum coming up in February 20th to 23rd, which is just around the corner at the Crown Plaza in Nashua. And so who else is coming?
Sure. And actually, if people are curious, because we have such an incredible lineup that we're not going to be able to cover everyone, they can go to nhlibertyforum.com. That's where you can buy tickets. That's where you can see the whole schedule and lineup. Someone else I'm personally very excited about is Patrick Byrne, who is the CEO of Overstock.com. And Overstock.com was the first major retailer to start accepting Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. And the way I hooked him was sending him a message in which the subject line was, "Do you want to know why the biggest per capita sales came from New Hampshire?" ? Because the biggest per capita sales on the first day of their sales that they started accepting Bitcoin came from little old New Hampshire. And the reason is because people here are very interested in cryptocurrencies. Bitcoin is not something, we need to get into detail with right now. It's a complex subject. I would actually encourage you guys maybe to can line up some experts for you. I think it's something that people should know more
Mike's
about.
Mike's actually spent a lot of time looking at that stuff.
Yes.
He's probably a resident expert, so we'll point him at it. And your new job is to tell us about Bitcoin.
So, one of the things with Bitcoin is people are becoming quite wealthy. A lot of people got in really early. The Free State Project itself had started accepting Bitcoin in 2011 for our events. We were early adopters, so to speak. And we want to help people understand more about what Bitcoin is, because if companies and, small businesses in New Hampshire start to accept Bitcoin, we are going to make a lot of people quite wealthy. It's still very early in the game. It's escalated from, I think 2 years ago it was $6. There were people who at Liberty Forum last year and the year before bought Bitcoin then because it was kind of a new thing, and we had speakers, and people were like, oh, I'll buy $10 worth. Those $10 worth are now worth, $1,000, $10,000. And so Patrick Byrne responded immediately to the email, and he was like, I want to come. I want to come meet you guys. I want to see what this is about. This is such a cool idea. It's so novel. A lot of people don't know about the Free State Project. I would say, the market penetration, even amongst Liberty lovers, is probably less than 10%. And it's such a fantastic idea. I just really want to get those last signers and bring people in and then see what we can get done.
There are, even though the Free State Project has been talked about and hammered and raised up for a number of years here in New Hampshire, I'm quite sure there are still some of the readers of Granite Grok and listeners of GrokTALK who still don't quite understand what is it. Is this a new political party?
Are you kidding? We have readers who don't know where New Hampshire is.
Are these new subversives? Are they on the left? Are they on the right? And I've tried to explain. There is the right versus the left, but there is the Republicans, so-called Republicans, and Democrats or progressives. Then there is that freedom versus tyranny axis, and I also throw in another one, right versus wrong, because sometimes I get hammered by both sides of being an evangelical Christian. So it all becomes a multi-dimensional thing. So for these folks, what is the Free State Project? Tea Party is free markets, fiscal frugality, and constitutional bounds. 3 things, and I don't understand why the Democrats hammer that. Well, they hate that, but that's beside the point. What's with the Free Staters?
So, the Free State Project itself is just a vehicle. It's the bus to bring people here. So the way it works is we're trying to get 20,000 people to sign a pledge that says if we get 20,000 people to sign the pledge, within 5 years we'll move to the state of New Hampshire, and then people will exert their fullest best efforts basically to keep government limited. I mean, I'm paraphrasing. You can go look at, freestateproject.org for the actual wording. But the idea is just to have people sign the pledge and to move. Once people get here, and this is the part that people really struggle with because people like to collectivize. So the Free State Project just brings people here. Once people are here, they can choose as individuals to do whatever they want. People run for office like Mark Warden or Kevin or, people have off-the-grid farms. They build guns. They, they do whatever they want to do. Some people just come, and I personally believe that the act of moving for your principles is activism. So some people come, and you never see them again, but they might vote in their town. They might just be a good neighbor. They might be the person you call, if you spun out and you're in a ditch. So we run the entire gamut. Some people disengage, some people engage, but the point is, as an organization, there is no agenda. There is no, we're trying to do this or that. We are just trying to bring people to the state of New Hampshire. That's it.
And the problem, if I can speak for the left, is that you want to turn New Hampshire into a state of anarchy. And, and there are some out on the western part of the state. I call them the Keen Kitties, and, they do all kinds of stunts. And I've met some of the Free Staters who call themselves anarchists. They really want no government whatsoever. A couple up my way in the Lakes region, and I meet with them monthly with the porcupine meetings that we have, and we have wonderful discussions.
Right.
But really, it's more of a case of all of the Free Staters want liberty and freedom, the ability to be left alone. That's really the only political agenda that I can see, other than, like Mark Warden, J.R. Hole, and a few, I'm so bad at names.
You got a couple of them, right? What's the problem? You got the first 2, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's a bunch, and they do get involved and try to protect liberty from the legislative standpoint, which is why Cynthia Chase had her mini rant.
And thank you to Cynthia for getting me mentioned on Rush Limbaugh.
Yeah.
I appreciate that very much.
But that's really the only thing that they do. They're not looking to make us anarchists. They just want limited government, the least amount of government necessary, which is why I do this and go, that's heresy according to progressives, because government must be everything. After all, at their convention, they said government is the only thing that we all belong to. Sorry, I'm not owned by government.
Yeah, we're going to have some disagreements there.
Yeah.
Well, but even if they mention anarchy, there was a thing Alan Moore, the comic writer, said that really struck me once, and he said, when you talk to people about anarchy, and you say, well, what are you actually afraid of there? And they were like, well, under anarchy, people will organize into gangs, and the gangs will control anything. And he's like, and? This is what we have now. So what are you afraid of?
Yeah, well, then you start going back into medieval times, or warlords.
Actually, you don't have to go to
like
war.
that.
The problem is in human history, it's never worked out well.
We even have gang colors, right? Red and blue. It's the crimson and the blood. It's all over. And it works the same way.
It's the donkeys and the elephants. I look back through thousands of years of history, and there were these gangs, and they fought over tea.
But they don't fight, right? If you're in a gang in L.A., right, you don't actually want to fight people. You don't want to shoot people. You just want to scare the crap out of them so they'll do what you do.
I don't know. In Chicago, they seem to get a little active there.
Well, they do, but
which impacts the rest of us and our motto of being the safest podcast in New Hampshire.
Sure, but that's when but they would prefer not to. They would prefer to just be able to frighten people into doing what they want them to without having to actually be violent. Okay. Democrats, Republicans.
I don't know.
Government?
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Well, I would say more like La Cosa Nostra, which is it's bad for business.
Right.
But, the difference between Cosa Nostra and the government, though, is Cosa Nostra maybe wants 5% instead of 30%, and they don't ask you to thank them.
That's true. Excellent point.
Yeah, but it's that crony capitalism when government decides to return the favors.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, I think we're going off a little off track here.
So
we could have a lot of fun with this, though.
So back to Liberty Forum. So Patrick Byrne, Bitcoin, that's going to be fantastic as well. And then we have Trevor Tim is coming out. He's from the freedom of. He's like a freedom journalist guy. His girlfriend is coming as well. She writes for Forbes, Kashmiri Hill. And we're running the gamut, and I just want to circle back to the Ignite Talks, because that was a couple of segments ago. Ignite Talks are kind of like TED Talks, but they're 5 minutes long. They're basically kind of the geek version of that. I know Ian will be doing one. His topic is...
The end of law.
The end of law.
Here we go.
Do you guys record these and post them?
Yes, and
Good,
actually...
Because I was going to say Prager University does that. The TED Talks, of course, are awesome. And it's a format that one of our reasons for going to a 15-minute audio format sections is because people are like, you need to create these more digestible bits. And then another evolution of that will be where we just like read a post or we talk about an issue like that. So that's awesome and then please, those are up at, where are we going to find these? Because we want to cross-post them because these are the things that, that's why we're here, to help spread that. And
so they will be up, obviously on our website and then also on the Ignite website. So it's also a way to sort of, get the message out there and to make these ideas palatable for, the everyday Joe. We're sitting here and we're talking about, having read Knock, Bastia, whatever. A lot of people aren't that geeky. They're not that interested in the ideas.
Nor should they
have to, sure. But, in some ways you do want them to know because one of the things we run into when we run into criticisms, people are like, oh, you're just a bunch of crazy anarchists or you're just blah-de-blah. It's like, well, you know what? There is an entire body of work. There is, philosophy behind this. There's intellectual thought behind this. It's not just like I woke up one day and I was like, oh, okay, I think this now, So I think for all of us, and I think you guys are doing it too, we're tasked with making these ideas palatable. And so breaking it down into those like bite-sized chunks, being able to explain in 5 minutes the end of law. I mean, I can't wait for that. So we're going to have about 20 people. They're from the community, doing talks on different things. It's not all philosophical. Some of it is just, people's hobbies or whatever. I am still working on which one I'm going to do, but I think I'm going to do art as activism. And so that's just Thursday.
That's just Thursday.
I want to bring up something that you talked about, and I think sometimes, and we've had this disagreement with other people, where we start talking about all of these long-dead authors, but who had lots and lots of good stuff to say. We certainly have those kinds of folks around. I look at Dr. Williams and Dr. Soul and a bunch of others who are continuing on in that vein, but they try to make liberty and freedom simple. But I've had my run-ins with people say, well, you need to read Bastiat, you need to read Locke, you need to do this, this, and this, and then you can become a good conservative or a good political activist. And I go back to the point of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution were deliberately written in a way that the plain farmer could read it and understand those plain
language. But the
language.
Supreme Court shall not be infringed.
They're too smart.
Well, here's my take on that. I look at the Constitution, shall not be infringed. That is a command. How do you obviate that? And as a software engineer, I look at it from the standpoint of, well, here's what this little project I started out to be, and it's glamorous. It's elegant because there's so little there to do what it's supposed to do. And we've had so much law piled on top of it. In the software parlance, it's called spaghetti code. And it's time to wash it away and almost start fresh, go back to our founding stuff that anybody should be able to understand if our educational system would work.
Well, so let me come back to that because it relates to
Can
the
we come
question
back
you
to it in
asked
60 seconds?
before the last break.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I can keep in. This is really just a conspiracy against Ian speaking.
This is Brad Rodenberg.
I like
to
listen to Ian speak. We'll be right back and listen to him speak.
This is the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is the repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now, at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested, riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW, New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
GrokTALK.
Skip's having a conversation. I don't want to listen to Skip. I want to listen to Ian. I can only interrupt you one more time today, so make this count. Do we even know where we were?
Yeah, I know where we were.
Okay, good.
I took notes.
He did. Smart man. So, please, proceed.
Okay, so it's the talk that I gave, the testimony that I gave that you liked so much. It had this theme, right, which is either you're doing something, you're not doing it, right? If you're not going to pay attention to the Constitution, why should we pay attention to your laws? And I actually would like to back that up again and say if a Constitution doesn't pay attention to the Declaration of Independence, why should we pay attention to it? So I'm not even a constitutionalist. And I'm not even a declarationalist. I'm just saying the Declaration is what we wrote down. It's what we said we're doing. If we're going to do something else, let's repudiate that and say what we're doing. But the Declaration, to me, has a very simple idea. It's the answer to two questions, right? Why do we have governments at all? And how do they get their power? Why do we have governments, according to this piece of paper, is to protect our rights. We form them to protect our rights. How do they get their power? We delegate it to them. So here's my take on all this, is if there's a power that I can't exert over you personally, I can't delegate it to a government. So I look at a constitution that says something like, well, we can take money from you to do something. I say, could I come to your house and say, my kid needs textbooks, you're paying for it? I can't. And so to me...
You can ask, but you can't demand.
Exactly, right? And so to me, there's a line you cross, and I just sort of articulated this for myself the other day. You cross this line from delegation to conscription, and that's when you get into trouble. And I think constitutions cross that line. So for me, the value of a constitution is just, we wrote it down, these are the rules. If those are not the right rules, let's change them. But to me, I also would say, when I talk about founding documents, to me the Declaration of Independence is the founding document. And it's not the only model for government that you can have. It's just the one we said, this is the reason we're no longer part of England.
You know, I will agree with you because it does set the philosophical table that the Constitution merely takes that philosophy and sets up a governance.
Yes.
Imperfectly, and because we see it's not entirely successful and hasn't been, I would claim, since the presidency of Woodrow Wilson, harmed further by FDR and LBJ and now Obama. making it morph into something that it shouldn't be, and that they have indeed tried and have been largely successful in changing that foundational law, the Constitution, by passing mere statutes and even lesser regulations to change the meaning of and the original intent of how we were to be governed.
All the way down to the bureaucratic scribblers.
Right, all the way down. But I'm saying that the Constitution pokes that hole, and they're just expanding it.
Well, see, this is why I had suggested that forum, at Liberty Forum, of limited government versus no government.
Well, I'm sorry. I was going to say, at this point, and I think we've all made this argument, and certainly the Free State Project is based on it, the beginning of any solution is at the state level, which is where the Constitution does speak very loudly that even though the federal government's off running around with, money lenders and whores, we can still, as a state, say, screw you. We're a sovereign entity, a local entity. We have the right to define what our laws are.
But again, now you can go down and say, well, so then a county could say screw you to the state.
Technically, they could.
A town could say screw you
Although
to the
we
town.
do have
and a person can say screw you to the town.
Actually, not quite, because the counties and the towns are political subdivisions of the state of New Hampshire.
Sure, which is perhaps an example of the state constitution poking a hole in the idea of delegation
Certainly
and crossing
could be.
that line.
Certainly could be.
So the idea that I would love to have people walking around is whenever there's some law that's either in play or it's being proposed, and you ask yourself these two questions. Is this protecting people's rights, in particular my rights? And is this something I could do to my neighbor? And if the answer to that second question is no, I can't delegate that to the government. 1.5 million times 0 is still 0.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea of the bottom-upness of it. I really, really do, because being a computer guy, I started off when it was the holy data center, and you walked on raised tiles, and only if you knew the exact incantations of acronyms to utter.
Priesthood, yeah.
Yes,
sure.
it was a priesthood. And now it's like, how many computers do we have in this room? My lonely smartphone has more power in it than the big old IBM 360 that I first attended to as a student operator.
Which circles back to the whole technology will set us free thing, right? And that's how I believe that's how we're going to win. Speaking of which,
but human nature doesn't fit on a CPU.
Well, and that's, but instead of, if we were fighting the state a lot less, we could actually expend a lot more energy on sort of ethics and morality and those kinds of things. But I want to talk about technology, specifically 3D printing.
Okay.
Because,
I like it.
Because Cody Wilson, who
is coming to Liberty Forum, and we just saw a very, very happy smile here in the studio. Yes, Cody Wilson, who is, basically the father, I would say, of, the Liberator gun, is speaking at Liberty Forum. He will be speaking in 2 sessions. The cool part is bringing a printer with him.
I don't know, but we have some printers in the community, and in fact, Free Staters were the first people to make a fully functioning Liberator in the wild. In fact, before the guy who did the plans had finished his, ours was done here. So
Cynthia Chase is not going to like you.
It's
this is so great to have have a scapegoat. On the progressive side.
We invited Cynthia to Liberty Forum. I would love it if she came. I think it's important for these people to see. It's really easy to demonize people when you don't know them or understand them. But if she came and she saw what we were about, she wouldn't have to agree with anything. She'd probably have a great time with Naomi Wolf. And, she could see that, we don't have horns. Yeah. We're not the troublemakers she thinks, and that she needs to figure out that really, our hearts are in the right place. When you listen to the things Ian says, how can you argue with that? How can you argue with the fact that
I'll play devil's advocate, because they believe in the Hobbesian philosophy that man is so fallen that he must give up all of his rights to the state.
Yes, because what is the state made of again?
Well, they kind of, but they kind of ignore
and those
that.
People are what? They're all the good people go into government. The one thing that can extort things from people.
I'll say it again. They tend to forget that all these people in government still put their pants on the same way that I do and you do and Ian does and
But that's
I don't know about him.
You know what? But here's what I would say in response to that. I would say, great. Formally repudiate the Declaration of Independence and write a new Declaration of Interdependence and get everybody to agree, yeah, this is what we're trying to do. It's not about protecting rights. It's about doing good or preventing bad or redistributing thing or bringing fairness from heaven to earth or whatever we think it is.
You know, you're absolutely right, and I will tell you this.
From heaven.
For decades, I've heard about that if I don't do what the Democrats or the progressives say, I'm violating the social contract. Doggone it, I have yet to see this social contract. And I keep saying the only two that I know about are the Declaration and the Constitution.
They can't write it down.
Well, I mean, I might argue that not even those. I mean, I didn't sign anything.
Right, yeah.
You know, so how are you bound to a contract that you weren't a party to?
Right. Yeah, as soon as you start talking about a contract, I think and that's one way to reduce the argument is to say, great, we're talking about contracts. Let's get out my law book, and I'll say, here are the 6 elements or whatever of a contract. Yeah, we're missing 1, 2, 3, and 6. And we're kind of missing 4.
See, now, wouldn't you want this kind of discussion at Liberty Forum?
Absolutely, absolutely. And, once
anywhere.
again, people can go to nhlibertyforum.com if they want more information. But, to just circle back to this
Squirrels.
idea.
We gotta fit this technology thinking quick because we're down to 3 minutes. So
okay.
What do you do?
So Cody Wilson, everyone go to the website. But just to get back to the point, I think one thing we forget to say is if we say the state should not be providing these services, is to say that there are voluntary ways to provide these services. You know, if someone says, let's get rid of the Department of Education, it doesn't mean let's not educate kids or, hey, teachers aren't going to have jobs. It might mean you can make the same amount of money teaching 4 kids out of your house as a tutor. So, when we talk about there are these problems and how do we address them, it's not like saying the things that are important to people are just suddenly going to disappear or we're going to stop taking care of the old or we're going to stop doing these things. We're just saying keep it local, and instead of forcing people to do something, persuade them. I will voluntarily give my money for good causes. Just don't come knocking on my door and take 50% of my labor.
And I'm right there with you on all of that because, as de Tocqueville showed and observed, that it was the civil society banding together to solve these kinds of problems on a voluntary basis that was the strength of America and not the government overburdening like he saw in Europe, and yet what have we done? We've done the exact same thing all over again. So I will agree with you, and I think we're on the same page in that what the progressives do want us to outsource our own self-responsibilities to government, who are made up of the same kind of people who put their pants on the same way that we do.
We got a minute and a half, real quick. What else you want to squeeze in?
Basically, I just want to leave people with the thought that if you're not at Liberty Forum, I think this is going to be a historic event. We have huge media coming out. Fox News is coming. The Discovery Channel is coming. The New Yorker is coming. Big newspapers, Wall Street Journal. It's really, I think people should be excited that this is happening in New Hampshire.
Why not?
People must not lose sight of that. We are doing a world-class conference at the Crowne Plaza in Nashua.
Anybody needs a Free State project, it's Al Jazeera. Yeah, this is huge.
We can get a lot of signers over there, actually.
Yeah, so really, for your listeners, come check it out. Buy the tickets. Their nighttime tickets only are $30. Thursday's free already. This is outreach. Come find out what we're about. Come listen to these incredible people. Someone as brave as Thomas Drake. I mean, this man is a hero. He had the guts to stand up, and not only did he stand up, he stood up and he won.
You need to put this in perspective, too, because everybody in this room has stepped out into the public's view and made statements that could be taken by other people in the political realm as a threat. And we know how they respond to that. So there's a lot of people out there who are risking their necks in one way or another, some smaller than others, and certainly, there's a good reason for that. Freedom isn't free, and you need to really...
If they want to find out more about the Free State Project, where do they go?
freestateproject.org or nhlibertyforum.com.
There, see, he cut me off. Do you feel better? We're going to have you back so I can cut you off again. Ian Underwood, Carla,
He's lost it.
Carla, Gericke, have a great weekend. Thank you so much for coming here. We look forward to seeing you in February at your event, which I just forgot the name of. For some, I am blanking. I'm just going to end the show.
Liberty Forum.
I'm just going to end the show right now. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We'll be back next week with more guests, more conversation, and more talk. This is GrokTALK. You guys have a great day. Thanks for listening to GrokTALK, brought to you by GraniteGrok.com, New Hampshire's leading conservative website. We'd like to make you an offer we hope you can't refuse. Do you have a local group or nonprofit? Do you have your own cable access show or podcast? We'd like to promote you right here on GrokTALK for free. You can send us your own 30-second audio promo, and then we'll play it during our podcast. If you'd like to take advantage of this opportunity, please email Steve at GraniteGrok.com. If you have comments or suggestions about this show or would like to recommend a guest, just email Steve at GraniteGrok.com. Since Jeanne Shaheen took office, the federal government has added $7 trillion to the national debt. There are more people still unemployed than when she took office, and 2.4 million Americans still can't find work. Most of the jobs that are actually created are only part-time. For the small price of $7 trillion, Jeanne Shaheen made millions of jobs disappear like magic.